Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Rational Trader Podcast. JD here with my co-host Louie Navellier. Hi, Louie. Happy 4th of July. We're recording a day early today, so I appreciate you doing that. I know you've got big plans for the 4th, and as do many of our audience. So let's try to just keep this short and sweet. And stocks are going up, and we should end it right there.
Yeah, it's a short day. Market closed at 1 p.m. Eastern and it's melting up. A little surprised. I have some clients that told me to get out. Now they want to tell me to get in. I like to buy in dips, and there weren't many dips today. So,
Did you? We talked a few times this week about Palantir. I know that's one of your stocks that you like, and
Mhm.
it had dipped and was very tempting. I know your wife got into the stock on a limit order. Did you do that for clients as well, or?
No, we already have it. My wife is adding it on her personal account. So I manage most of her money, but she has one account she likes to play with. We did a newsletter with her because she likes to buy in dips. She likes things on sale. I don't know if it's a lady thing. And it was a wildly successful newsletter. Um, but it's now the roots of our Platinum Growth Club.
Oh, excellent. Good for her. Does she help you do the writing then?
No, no, I did the writing. Yeah.
Okay.
She's an English major. She can obviously edit, and she's a lawyer. So, but no, I do most of the writing. I write like I talk. So, but I am a bonehead English person. So I remember going to college. I was top 1% math, but I was bottom 11% English. So. One of the reasons I didn't go to Berkeley is I didn't want to take bonehead English. So I went to Cal State Hayward and finished college in 3 years.
Boy, you know how close I came to going to Berkeley?
Hmm.
When I applied to the UC schools back in 1982,
Hmm.
it was one application to the UC system,
Hmm.
and then you put your top three campuses that
Hmm.
you would like to attend. And boy, I wrestled with Los Angeles and Berkeley. You know, I couldn't decide which one to, and I'm not even sure why I ended up putting Los Angeles on top.
Well,
And
UCLA is a good school, but UC Santa Barbara has a beach on campus. That's very
I
popular.
wasn't aware of, I knew nothing about the UC,
Yeah.
coming from Minnesota, I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, and then UC Santa Cruz is interesting because they that school they weren't doing grades, they were doing written evaluations. So the kids that scored really high on their SATs and all, and knew they were going to go to grad school, a lot of them would go to UC Santa Cruz.
My big brother at the fraternity at UCLA was one of the smartest guys I ever knew, and he was from Santa Cruz. He was a Santa Cruz guy.
Yeah, yeah, and then UC San Diego is very popular. It's gotten bigger and bigger. Yeah,
Yeah. Now, which one's the Jesuit school down in San Diego? Is that
that's
SDSU?
uh, there's a Catholic school in San Diego, and I think it's just called San Diego. I don't know. Anyway, there's a Catholic school in San Diego.
Yeah.
I didn't know if it was Jesuit or not, but I think Santa Clara is Jesuit. Okay.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, my wife went to that Catholic school the first year, and then she transferred to UCSD.
Well, once I was at UCLA, then of course I was a political science major that wanted to go to law school at the time, and
Mhm. Hmm.
Berkeley was, that I didn't want to go to the same law school as my undergrad, and so then when I was wrestling with Berkeley and Los Angeles, then
Hmm.
that was going to be my way to get to Berkeley. Boy, I escaped. Can you imagine?
Well, that's where I'm from. It's funny they had signs that you're entering Berkeley. We are nuclear free, even though they had Lawrence Livermore Labs doing nuclear research. So I was a little confused. But they got the earthquake fault going through the stadium, where the Cal Bears play. So,
Oh, sure, sure.
but yeah, actually, when I went to school, the class size at Hayward was 35, and we had all kinds of professors from Berkeley and Stanford. They would actually go experiment on the state students and then refine their curriculum before they went back to their fancy schools.
Ah,
Uh,
interesting.
so, but yeah, it was only because I was a California resident, it was only $2,400 with books for bachelor's and master's, which of course I
Wow.
did both in 4 years, and then I went to work for the Fed.
It's so different. I thought I was achieving something at UCLA when my out-of-state tuition was $1,200 per quarter,
Hmm.
and but the in-state tuition was $400. So
Hmm.
I left home in the middle of the summer before I enrolled, got my California driver's license, bought a parking pass for my vehicle, and I think the third item I needed was a utility bill, and I
Yeah.
was able to get in-state tuition.
No, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, UC Davis is also a good school, especially if you want to do, I don't know, like all the golf course guys, the or agronomists, that figure out the new golf turf and stuff. Uh,
Okay.
so they go to UC Davis, and you can also go there if you want to grow marijuana. It's but it's a big ag school, and ag's become very productive.
Well, I'm heading out to Tucson on Friday
Mhm.
to see my mom, and I get to stop in Phoenix and play around a golf with another college friend of mine who lives in Phoenix. But I'm always amazed at those golf courses because the grass, how they maintain the grass in that 110 degree constant
Well,
heat.
it's Bermuda, and then during the winter they overseed it with rye sometimes, and then
Okay.
the road just burns off. So in the winter you'll see the grass will go dormant, and
Yeah.
they can seed it with rye if they want to keep it green. But in the summer it's just Bermuda. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. Well, let's talk about the economy and stocks. Today was got kind of a data dump in advance of the holiday. Got a fantastic jobs report. Um, it looked like I didn't realize that voting for Trump, I was going to be expanding the government so much with all that
Yeah,
government hiring.
it was 73,000 government jobs. 7,000 federal workers, though, disappeared. And most of those,
Where'd they go?
they probably took early retirement. And then um, the 73,000, most of them were school teachers.
Yeah, now those 7,000 government workers aren't in a CIA black site, are they?
I don't know. I don't know. I think Palantir is redoing all the national intelligence. So, but but yeah, because they're school teachers, they get laid off in July. So, it was fleeting, but the unemployment rate fell to 4.1. They had upward revisions past 2 months. That was good. Wage growth came in lower than expected, only up 0.2, 8 cents. So it's still positive.
It was nice
This
to see Treasury Secretary Bessent really call out Jay Powell as he should. Trump loses all his credibility when he spouts off on it. But when Bessent calls out Powell for his childish kindergarten, if Trump wasn't doing his tariffs, I would have cut rates, kind of nonsensical comment. I'm just like the guy needs to resign.
Well, there was a European Central Bank conference in Portugal this week,
Yeah.
and their two most notable things is that first of all, the head of the Bank of England said they're going to cut at least 3 times, more times, and ECB says cut eight. So we have this collapse in global rates underway. But the other notable thing was that Powell admitted that they're going to now follow the data. They were ignoring the data because the economists were forecasting higher inflation from tariffs. But they are now, he says he's now going to follow the data. So market rates
I
have,
thought he
have,
was following the data.
no, no, no. He was ignoring the data in the last few months, 4 months.
Well, that's true.
But, yeah, because we had
He was
deflation.
ignoring the data while he was saying, I'm following the
Yeah,
data.
yeah, yeah. So that's where he lost his credibility. And now he's got people on the FOMC that want to cut. Um, when you look at something like oh the uh, I mean, we've had some economic statistics that like when we look at the ADP report, which showed job losses,
Hmm.
the only place that was making jobs was the South. Okay. And so there are weak spots in the economy, and that's what the new Beige Book will reconfirm as did the previous Beige Book.
Hmm.
The previous Beige Book said that only 9 of the 12 Fed districts were not growing or under duress. And so we'll see what the next Beige Book survey says. But yeah, a lot of the country's not doing well. So we shall see.
The services numbers that came out today were really, really wonderful.
Yeah, they were good. They were good. And business activity and orders all picked up. That's the most positive thing. They were kind of lackluster before. So we're back to normal. Okay. Although I think 10 of the 16 industries were up. So we got to get that number a little bit better. Okay.
Well, and that's the critique for me on Powell is that he's missing, and I've said this before, he's missing an opportunity for prosperity to really lift all boats. And it's the only way. I mean, there's no perfect system, from a fairness and equity standpoint. Capitalism just doesn't work that way. But you can have, it is the only system that for the most part does lift all boats. And Powell is missing a grand opportunity, and it's probably already too late. I mean, maybe if he cuts 50 bips in July, he can salvage this, but man, we could really be in fuego here if he really understood the concept of prosperity.
It doesn't really matter how much he cuts in July because if it gets too much, it might panic the market. The main thing is to start cutting, keep cutting lower, follow market rates lower. Anyone can be Fed chairman or on the Federal Reserve Board. You just follow market rates. And so as market rate, you remember a few months ago, CNBC was saying we're going to have 5 cuts. And I was early in the year saying 4.
What's
And
fascinating to me is if you look at the Liberation Day. Okay, so you had Liberation Day, right? Now, I'm going to defend Powell for this much. He was right to be concerned about batshit crazy, okay? Because what Trump did on the second was batshit crazy. Maybe there's a method to his madness. I have no idea, but it was crazy. The market said it was crazy, and he quickly reversed, and the market reversed. The only guy that didn't reverse is Powell in the Federal Reserve. Now, that was going on 3 months ago now.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to defend Trump. I get lots of hate mail for every time I try to defend the guy. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to get more revenue going into the Treasury. And last I looked, it's a tariffs release 6%, maybe it'll be 11 or 12% soon. They'll need that money because there's tax cuts coming in the new tax bill when the House approves it. There were 5 Republicans that didn't cooperate. So they're
He was being influenced by some elements though that this whole revenge tax concept and the Mar-a-Lago Accord stuff. That's what to me what was fueling Liberation Day. And you're right, he wanted to bring revenues into the mix, but I think
well,
he was influenced by some of this crazy stuff.
I just think that you have to decide if you're for slavery. Please remember the democratic states like underground economies. Okay,
Okay,
they
yeah.
like illegal labor. Those of us that have W-2s, They
Well, and
like to,
the worst aspect of the Democratic Party that you're about to bash on is their self-indulgent, self-dealing, put money in their own pocket nonsense that makes me want to vomit. And
correct.
I
So,
and
so
I've known several,
you have to pay for the right to work in many states.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
And so if I lived with you in Minnesota, not only would they be seizing any W-2 money, they'd be seizing my 1099 money. Because, I lost the right to work in California when I was 27. It took 6 years to overturn. But I have a $52 million judgment against me.
right.
And that's why they took my Social Security. Under the Biden administration, I got a notice that I will not be getting my Social Security. And that caused me to move to right to work states. I know they're not, some of them are blue sometimes. Nevada's a blue state sometimes. And uh, but you know, that's 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 that. So the Pritzkers are, the Hyatt hotel chain. Obviously, they want cheap workers. So there's a method to the madness, okay? And uh,
Yeah, I'm listen, I call a spade when I see it.
yeah.
I just thought that was crazy. And he, to his credit, he backed off the crazy and markets figured it out.
But he's
I'm
not.
just saying Powell hasn't figured it out. And
Yeah, but if you ever go to a Trump club, they're all foreign workers because they're seasonal. And he
right,
hires these seasonal workers, same people they hire for ski resorts and stuff. So he
right.
doesn't pay their Social Security. So he's not anti-immigration. He just wants you to come in the legal way. But you know that you can get workers from Romania and some other places. They're cheap. They're going to be cheaper than Americans for the seasonal work. And the hotel industry does this.
Absolutely.
Trump does it on because Mar-a-Lago's closed now. And so it's interesting. And one thing I will give Trump credit for, at least Mar-a-Lago isn't segregated. In Palm Beach, our clubs are either Jewish or Gentile, except Mar-a-Lago. So, I'm not allowed in some of the clubs in Palm Beach. Okay.
No, he is socially liberal for the most
Sure.
part.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he really
Yeah.
is.
So yeah, and he doesn't care that what sexual orientation you are and stuff like that. And
Right.
so, but he does think that some corporate interests have given America away. And California will argue that outsourcing created the wealth in California. And California outsources more than any other place. And that's why they can, fine you for CO2 and stuff because you can't have a factory anymore. I guess I don't know if Tesla, well, they might get some credits, so I don't know if they have to pay the CO2 fine. I know the dairy farmers do, but it's uh, but there are problems with outsourcing. So when the Bay Bridge collapsed and they ordered new steel from China, they put the steel nowadays is galvanized, so you don't have to paint it. Okay, they put zinc in it. So the old bridges from like the Depression, the Golden Gate Bridge and things like that, you have to paint.
Mm.
So anyway, they got this fancy galvanized bridge structure for the first section of the Bay Bridge, and they hooked it up, and it's obviously very nice. And then they wondered, what are those spots? It started to rust. Okay. And they realized they got whoever they ordered the steel from in China didn't put enough zinc in it. You know what I mean? And now the steel will have to
Imagine that.
replace the
They shorted
material.
them on the zinc.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there is a danger with outsourcing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously, when you go into a Walmart, most of the stuff's from China, and if you're hooked on the cheap plastic stuff, you know where to get it. And you know, Trump already apologized. There might be fewer dolls this holiday season, so we'll see. But I understand what both sides are trying to do. It's just that what you're seeing now is the reciprocal tariffs are going to be minimal. Now, it's very unclear what they did with Vietnam because the Vietnam deal was done and Nike and things like that rallied. Of course, Trump has his own tennis shoes. They're only $500. They're gold. I assume they're made in
The
Vietnam.
golden boot.
But what was happening with Vietnam is China was doing a lot of subassembly in Vietnam, just like they do it in Mexico. So that's where they were really trying to crack down. And so, but uh, it's the rest of the world puts tariffs on us, so it's just tit for tat. So, Britain has no reciprocal tariffs. Australia probably have none. We'll see what happens. He's trying to do a pincer move on the EU because he gave Britain a good deal. He's trying to give Switzerland a good deal. And then he'll tell Europe, well, if you weren't, you know, protecting 27 countries with all their idiotic tariffs, I'd give you a good deal too. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, Louis, I wanted to get your thoughts, maybe turning our attention to the markets. Assuming the Federal Reserve does figure this out, and I think the market's going to be always ahead. I've been really noticing this past week, in particular, the home building sector and construction and things like that are starting to stir, if you will. So I'm curious in your models. I know Toll Brothers used to be one of the stocks that you liked. You got out of the way, rightfully so, some time ago, and I'm just wondering if there's some movement in the home building sector or stocks associated with the home building
Not
sector.
till rates come down. I watched Toll Brothers in Reno. I guess I'm on Zillow. You cannot sell a home in Reno unless you cut the prices, including the brand new homes. And Toll Brothers is very active in Reno. The other thing is the insurance is very expensive because we're in a fire area. Um, One of the reasons there's an insurance problem in California and Nevada is Cal Fire dominates our firefighting, and even in Nevada. And they ran the insurance companies out for having their own fire trucks and stuff. So I used to have AIG, and AIG would come spray the house during the fires,
Hmm.
and the firefighters ran them out. They didn't like the private sector doing their job for them because when they light a backfire, they're going to get overtime. And if the private insurance companies are sitting there spraying the foam and fighting the fires, it screws up their overtime pay.
Interesting.
So that's one of the problems we have out west, and unfortunately, it's become a cash market when you want to buy and sell homes, and it's just the way it is. Because if you do cash, you don't have to insure.
What was that? There was a movie about those firemen that perished in one of those blazes.
I think it was in Arizona and Flagstaff.
Was that where it was in
Yeah, that's when they
Arizona?
got caught, and then they had all the blankets and didn't make it. It was very tragic.
Oh,
I don't know if you've seen the firefighters that jump out of the plane. They're packing 80 pounds of gear. I
yeah.
mean, imagine landing on your knees, packing all that weight. I know that you can manipulate your chute to try to skip a little.
Yeah. Well, the idea I
If
think
you're going
is
to do a tuck and roll with 80 pounds on your back, that's going to be tough. I remember seeing those guys. I was actually Jackson Hole. They were loading up. I was, I was on a private plane. I was watching these guys load up.
that's crazy.
I also saw Alan Greenspan. He came off of the Air Force Two. He took a flight from Dick Cheney because they had the annual Fed conference. So at Jackson Hole. But the market is celebrating the fact that uncertainty is disappearing, and the average worker will now get more money in their paycheck next week if this tax bill passes versus a tax increase. So that's why they got to pass it. And some congressmen are whining and trying to get something last minute. Now they stayed up all Wednesday night. I'm sure they're tired now. They want to go home for 4th of July. And the bill's going to pass. And we're going to put more money in people's pockets starting next week. And we expect the velocity of money to uptick. Taxes should be set where the velocity of money is optimal. Now the other comment I have, I was debating with somebody the other day that, look, if government's more efficient than the private sector, sure, raise taxes. But if the private sector is more efficient than the government sector, you got to cut taxes.
That's right.
But no one knows where the velocity of money is optimized. But we are going to be having some quarters where we're going to get 5% GDP growth. And the real kicker is the trade is, Trump's guilting all these countries to buy our energy, to buy our ag, and to buy more U.S. goods and services, um, and quit messing around. Canada tried to do the digital service tax, so we stopped negotiating with them, and then they dropped that tax immediately.
Louis,
Oh.
this past week, Louis, we got two updates to GDP now. I was curious your thoughts. The first update was a decline to 2.5%. It did tick a little bit higher to 2.6% today. Um, I thought that was actually that 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 was surprising to me because the the correction from the import and the trade deficit issues in the first quarter, and the fact that we were so negative in the first quarter, I thought we were going to really have a blowout quarter, and 2.5% is not blowout.
But we still are in a manufacturing recession, okay? And that's why you got to cut rates to get the housing sector going. Housing creates a tremendous amount of durable goods, okay?
I agree with that.
So, cut rates and then they'll sell more cars and they'll sell more homes and then there'll be more durable goods ordered, etc. So,
What do you say to folks that would contend that the Federal Reserve only controls short-term rates and that those housing markets that you're talking about, very, very important, as you said, are really tied to longer-term rates?
well, that's why Scott Bessett's so important because Janet Yellen, the former Fed chairman, could not manage the long end of the yield curve. So we had a permanently inverted treasury curve for many years because she mostly sold short intermediate debt. But under Bassett, now we're selling more bonds, and bond yields are meandering lower. And he's trying to appease the bond vigilantes. But we do have a
Well, hold
global.
on a second, though. If there's greater supply, doesn't he have to raise rates to sell them?
No. Let me explain why.
Okay.
There's a pay cut next week. Guess what happens? People put more money in the bank. The bank buys the treasuries. So the key is to get the velocity of money maximized, not to figure out, you keep lowering taxes to the velocity of money is maximized. That's what you have to do. It's as simple as that. Because the faster money changes hands, the more prosperity rises. Now, here's the
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
The world is getting older, and old people don't buy stuff. Okay?
That's
They
right.
really bought everything. And the economy grinds to a halt. And household formation ceases. Okay? So, your most prosperous economies are going to be younger and where there's household formation. So, Utah, fastest growing state in America, okay, has been for a few decades now. What do they do the rest of us don't do? They have more kids, okay? More household formation, okay? And they're out, and they
They
don't even
do.
drink. They don't even drink in Utah. They have beer, but they have a beer called porter.
That doesn't really count.
Yeah, yeah. But
Speaking of alcohol, Louis, we did get a an earnings report this week that I thought was
Constellation,
super interesting.
yeah,
Constellation Brands.
beer sales are down. I know.
Yeah, it's but it's fascinating because Constellation Brands stock was up 5% after the results. Um, It could be that earnings are, to me, that's a preview of not necessarily the what it says about the consumer and demand for alcohol or spirits, if you will. But boy, this earnings season is really shaping up to be a good one, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's going to be double digit all year when you cap weight it. If you uncap weight it, it might not quite be double digit. But no, it's just time to grow and prosper, and we have a pro-business president. I know he's unconventional, but he's pro-business. You're going to see the dollar gets mojo back big time. because again, we're food and energy independent. We have stronger GDP growth. We have better demographics than the rest of the world. The whole rest of the world is collapsing, and
Yeah.
it's very sad. Okay, okay, Spain's growing from everybody moving there. Okay, so is Portugal, but all the other countries are just imploding. Britain can't grow. They're old. They're losing
Well, and
people.
there's some weird political stuff going on there again too.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Kersteimer is one of his gals is going to leave, and that's got everybody all upset. And but yeah, the Reform Party, led by Nigel, is might be the new party. So my Mr. Sunak, the previous prime minister, spoke at my son's graduation at Stanford with his wife. It was a dual presentation. They both went to Stanford Business School, and they basically said they didn't realize when they went there it was a matchmaking place. But anyway, which it kind of is.
You can't
Um,
help that.
but it was he was a very eloquent speaker, but he didn't do anything. You know what I mean? The under the Conservative Party, mostly led by Boris Johnson, they were increasing taxes and they were trying to appease everybody, and that's not what people want. People want decisive action. So, we were talking before I got on. I was on the Gutfield show as a guest, not as a in the audience. I wasn't a
Right.
guest, but what they were talking about was alligator Alcatraz and how well marketed that is, and that's what they do. They're trying to appease people. You know what I mean? And
Right.
they're trying to be decisive, and no one's anti-immigration. Just do it the legal way. In fact, they have
Sure.
an app
Sure.
so you can self-deport, and then you can come back in.
Louis,
So,
let's leave it with a stock idea or two if you have one. And I've got a trade. Well, it's not even a trade, an ETF that I think is a slam dunk, big winner coming up here. So you go first.
so obviously there was a NATO meeting. Obviously, Europe's going to be buying more stuff. Um, the best defense stocks are Elbit Systems. That's ESLT, Israeli. Obviously, Palantir Technologies, PLTR. I like Helmet Aerospace, HWM. They're all benefiting from solid defense orders. The entire defense industry is being redone uh, to be more uh, to be more flexible. Okay, but the U.S. does sell a lot of defense orders, and that may be how they get tariffs to fall a lot because again, Europe said they're going to up their defense spending to almost 5% of GDP. So I know countries like Poland do it now, but if some big countries like France and Germany do it, that's going to be a big deal.
So those are good names, Louis. We've talked about some of those before. I really like that Howmet HWM. I've been wanting to trade it for a two sigma trade, which just to remind folks is the concept of buying a stock when it's trading two standard deviations below the mean, and the darn HWM never quite gets there. So that's a good name for folks to look at. And my one idea that I think everybody should have in some way, shape, or form is a fading of the volatility trade. We are drifting into complacency here, which I think is going to be very positive and going to continue through the month of July. The VIX, as I look at it, is right around 16.5 at the moment. I think we could be below 15 before the middle of the month. The SVXY has been very reluctant to, and rightfully so, to trade in step with the VIX, Louis, because everybody is afraid of a spike and something crazy happening. But at 42.92, the SVXY I think has some 20% upside from here. So either as a trade or even a longer term investment as we get calm in the market and normalization. That's my one idea for the 4th of July here.
Yeah, I think July will be good. I think the issue will be August, as always. I've been pretty bearish in August last couple of years, and it's gone higher, despite me. But it's seasonality. Europe's on vacation. I'm in New York City right now. They'll be on vacation. It's hard for markets to go up when no one's around, and what will happen is there's these air pockets in August, and the last horrible flash crash we had was in August. But we should be having some rate cuts, and so we should enter August on a strong note, and we'll get some more rate cuts, and we'll see. All the trade deals will largely be wrapped up by then, and
Well, I would add that
there'll be nothing else to bitch about.
I think you're spot on. I think July is going to be good, and August, it is a coin flip. But boy, if things go the way I'm seeing it, that SVXY getting up to 50, and then right as we head into August, you can flip it around and then get hedged long volatility because at some point there will be another spike.
Yeah, of course,
There
markets
always
just
is, right?
buy, and but with the impending global interest rate collapse that's now unfolding, multiples will go up, and money is flowing to stocks, and
Yeah, yeah.
so that's why we've been melting up, and that's not my words, that's Eddie Ardini's words.
And Louie, let's close it out. I've been thinking about a title for today's podcast. Long live prosperity. Happy 4th of July. Great episode. Thank you for your thoughts. Enjoy your daughter in New York and your time there. And the next time you and I speak, I'll be down with my mother in Tucson. So,
Great, great.
all right, everybody. This is JD for the Rational Trader Podcast with Louie Navellier. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a great 4th of July, and we'll see you all next week.